Well, good morning, everybody, or good evening. I guess it depends on where you are. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to get everything set up so that I can manage this a little bit better than last time. But I just want to say thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope you all can hear me well. I hope that you can see everything well. This is kind of new for me, and just trying to get all the tech stuff set up. But all right, so this is going to be a live stream of the cleaning of this painting, and I just want to give you guys a kind of setup of how I think this is going to go. I'm going to pretend like I haven't already tested this piece and kind of start fresh and give you guys kind of the rundown of how I would approach this painting, do some tests, and then I'm going to start in with the cleaning process writ large. And then at that point, once I've gotten into the cleaning process and I'm well underway, I'll start trying to answer some questions. I tried to set up slow chat, but I don't know. It seems to be going by pretty fast as is. I don't know why there's no HD. There should be. I'm using an HD camera. I mean, we're just gonna have to see how this goes. Let me do some quick tech stuff just to see if I can sort that out. Bear with me. Let's see. I guess I need my own tech production team, huh? Sorry for the delay. I'm just trying to get everything squared away. But once I get it squared away, we'll start in earnest. All right. I think YouTube is just reducing the quality because of the volume of streaming. That's what I've been reading. Anyhow, maybe it's just my internet connection. Who knows? My son is here and he's using the computer, so that may be it. Anyhow, welcome. Let's start over. Good morning, good evening. Thank you guys for joining me. Today we are going to be doing the live stream of the cleaning of an oil painting. This is a 22-inch by 30-inch oil painting on canvas by the artist E.R. Sirzman, S-I-R-Z-M-A-N. At least that's what I can make out from his signature. I don't know a ton about this painting. It came in from a client who is watching. Hello, by the way. And I learned that this painting belonged to the client's great uncle, where it hung over a fireplace for many years before it was passed down to the client's parents, where it again hung over a fireplace for many years. Those pieces of information can be really helpful because it allows me to have a little bit better understanding of the life of the painting and where it has been, what it may have been subject to. And in this case, over a painting, it's probably been subject to a bit of heat exposure, quite a bit of soot and other carbon particulate from the fireplace. My guess, given that it's been in the family for quite some time, is that there may have been some smokers, and in the living room, there may have been some smoking. So those things lead me to believe that there is an accumulated surface grime on the surface of the painting, as well as an old varnish. And so both of those things need to be removed before we can see what the artist really wanted us to see. So the first thing that I would do is obviously gather as much information about the painting and the artist as possible. If there was information about the artist online or in books, in reference libraries, I would research those. Here, there really isn't that much information, and that's not out of the ordinary. There are plenty of artists who don't have big bodies of work, or who don't land with a big a big splash and leave a big mark on the art world. That's not a condemnation of their artwork or anything like that. So the first thing that I would do when I get to the painting is I want to take a look at the surface. And this painting, structurally, this painting is in really good condition, and it doesn't have any holes or tears or flaking or anything like that. That's one of the reasons I chose it, because it's going to be a straightforward cleaning. But if those were issues, I would address them before the cleaning. I'm going to be taking this natural rubber sponge, which is just a natural rubber sponge, and it's really tacky, and it's used to remove soot and particulate. Paper conservators use these a lot. People who go into homes after fires use these a lot, and they're really great to just kind of check to see what surface grime is on the surface that can be removed without any solutions or solvents. So if you can look, this is that's the sponge. Nothing fancy. And what I'll do is I'll just find a little spot, and I will just check to see if anything comes off with this sponge. And again, I'm just trying to see what's on this painting, trying to learn as much about it before I start cleaning it as I can, because the more information that I have, the better off I am. So you can see that nothing really came off, which isn't good or bad. It just is what it is. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little cotton swab. These are paper rolled cotton swabs, just in case anybody asks. These are not plastic. These are not wood. They're paper, biodegradable. And I will start off with a little bit of distilled water, and just again on the edges. And this is where the painting is usually covered by the frame. This is where the rabbet, the little lip that covers the frame, covers the painting, and it's a good place to test because it's generally not an area that's seen all that often. Now, it also complicates it because it's covered by the frame. It usually isn't as dirty as the main field of the painting, somewhere in here, but this is a good safe place to test. And oftentimes I'll test multiple areas or different colors just to get a better idea of how each area is going to respond. So just a quick little test, and you might be, where we go, you might be able to see, here, let's go like that. I don't know. This is gonna be a work in progress. We're gonna try to figure this out. So you can see there's just a little bit of surface grime that comes up with distilled water. So obviously not a lot, and the painting is not terribly clean because of this little test. So I'm gonna move on to another solution that I use. And one thing that I wanna mention about all the solutions and the materials that I use, I am deliberately not providing specifics in terms of materials, ratios, solvents, and all that kind of stuff. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And the first and foremost is that I'm not trying to do a DIY video and telling you guys how to do this. That's not my intention. And I do not want anybody to run out to the store to purchase these materials and then try to do it on their own and then run into problems and ruin their paintings or get themselves into trouble and then point to me and say, well, Baumgartner told me what to do. And finally, the insurance policy that I carry does not allow me to provide instruction. So it may be kind of a punt, but I'd like to stay in the good graces of my insurance carrier. And so I am following their rules and not providing specific instruction. And this has all been cleared with them. So if you're disappointed, I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. Anyhow, another solution that is slightly different than distilled water, and I'm going to go in a new spot, and I'm going to see what this does. And the whole point of doing this, is to learn what's on the surface and how best to remove it. Because ultimately, my goal is to get down to the varnish layer. But I have to remove the surface grime before I get to the varnish layer, because otherwise, the solvents don't really penetrate this accumulated surface grime very well. They can, and if you really abrade the canvas and really scrub it, then certainly they can, but that's really not a good practice. So the cleaning is kind of a 2 or 3 stage process. First, remove the surface grime, then remove the varnish, and then sometimes have to go back in and remove surface grime that's under the varnish. So you can see here, there we go. Again, not terribly effective. That's another mild solution. So I'm gonna go to something a little bit different and see if that has any effect. And again, these tests are done partially on a part of the painting that's been covered. So a lot of the particulate, the soot, and the grime probably hasn't accumulated in this area. So it may not be completely indicative of the real accumulation of dirt and grime. Let's see. But this is what we're gonna do. I see a lot of you guys are complaining about the resolution. I am using an HD feed. I will just double check it. I'm on Wi-Fi, but that shouldn't, Wi-Fi. So here you can see a lot more surface grime has come off, and that is probably the solution that I'm going to use to clean the painting. Give me 1 second. I'll check my feed just to make sure that it hasn't defaulted down to something less. It may be a little shaky. Sorry, I'll try not to get you guys all wonky. No, I'm at a full HD. Yep, I don't know what's going on. So maybe it's YouTube. I'll blame YouTube. How about that? Okay, so now that I have a better understanding of the surface grime, I can take some of these areas where I've made tests, and I can start to look at the varnish layer. And again, I'm going to start off with a very, very mild solvent solution. And I'm going to just see what I can remove. And I'm not going to be surprised if this mild solvent doesn't remove a lot of varnish, because it's mild, and that's by design. I don't want to start off with something that's very concentrated or very powerful, because it's always better to take a cautious approach and work up to those stronger solvents if need be. So not much varnish coming off, but we'll go to something a little bit stronger and see how that works. And I've done all of this before. I don't know if you can see it right up there. There's a little test, and over here there's a little test. So I've already done this when I first received the painting and before I drafted the proposal. So this is just kind of to give you guys an idea of how I would go about it when I do it. And obviously this is a little bit abbreviated, and I'm not taking notes because, well, I already know the answers. So a little bit stronger of a solvent, and that is a little bit more effective in taking off some of the surface, some of the varnish, but not enough, and not as much as I'm hoping. So I will move to another solvent and see what that does. Now, I have a good idea of what kind of varnish was used on this painting, given the age of the painting, and given that it's an American painting, and it is most likely a Damar varnish. Damar is a natural resin varnish that comes from a tree. It's tree sap, and that's probably the most common varnish used in historical paintings. It's actually probably still the most commonly used varnish, and it's a fine varnish. The only problem is that it yellows and it deteriorates over time. So knowing that, given the time period, I have a pretty good idea that that's Damar. And I can smell the Damar when it starts to come off with the solvent. Yeah. So another solvent, and there we go. That one's a little bit more effective. So that may be the solution that I'm going to be using. Before I can take the solvent and kind of start cleaning the painting, I'm going to be, whoops, sorry, let me turn that off. I will probably get many phone calls during this feed because, of course, I'm a business and I'm still working. I'll ignore them all. If you're calling me and watching this, I'm sorry, I'm ignoring you. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that cleaning solution that was effective in getting the surface grime off, and I'm going to start working on part of the painting. And I'll start up in this corner, just because I'm a righty and starting at the left-hand corner is really effective. So this is a brush and it's got the paste on it. And I make this paste, and it's a combination of materials that my father and I perfected over many years based on research and literature from other conservators. And so this, I'm going to put this on the surface. And what this is going to do is just kind of break up the surface grime. This will not affect the varnish. No matter how much you put on, no matter how long it sits, this paste will not remove the varnish layer. And that's important because I'm not trying to remove the varnish layer at this point. I'm just trying to remove surface grime so that I can access the varnish layer. And you notice that I'm working in a section here. I'm not going to kind of slather the entire painting over with it because I want to make sure that I can keep control. And I'll use the bristle brush just to agitate the surface a little bit to break up whatever is on the surface. And in this case, it is most likely soot. I can smell it. There's a lot of nicotine or tobacco, tar, whatever's in cigarettes. That's one of the funny things is sometimes if I'm doing cleanings of a lot of paintings, they're very smoke damaged. By the time I come home, I smell like an ashtray because all that stuff that's on the painting becomes somewhat airborne or loose. And of course it gets all over me. So it's kind of gross. I generally wear PPE. Obviously I'm wearing gloves. I will wear masks and respirators when I do this, but I can't talk through a respirator right now. And I've given most of my respirators away. So at this point, I will be fine. You guys don't have to worry, but it is best practice to protect yourself. And I generally do that. But for this demonstration in this example, I'm not. It's for your benefit. So you can see, you see how dirty the tip of that brush is? Yeah, that's surface grime. That is what's coming off of the painting. So now I can take a cotton ball or two. These are just non-sterile cotton balls. And I can start to lift up some of that surface grime. And if there was any doubt about just how much surface grime was on this painting, look at that. And this, you can tell a lot about the surface grime from its color. This surface grime is predominantly gray, which would lead me to believe that that's soot from the fireplace. But it also has a little bit of brownish in it, and that would be from the smoking. This isn't like a hard and fast rule, but over time you kind of learn to identify by sight, by smell, by sound, even, and I know it sounds terrible, but by taste. And not like that I'm taking spoonfuls of this stuff, but you can identify materials or solvents by all of your senses. And that's something that you just kind of learn over time. You pick up all these abilities to operate within your field that I don't think anybody in any school is going to tell you that you can hear the sound of a varnish starting to become tacky, or you can taste the difference between this solvent and that solvent. So this is what is on the painting. Oop, there we go. It's disgusting. It smells bad, and it is obfuscating the true colors. So I'm going to now work in another section. And again, just trying to keep this controlled. Now, again, because this solution, this cleaner, this paste, isn't ever contacting the paint layer, it's not as high stakes or risky, so to speak, as the varnish removal, where you're using solvents and contacting the actual paint layer. But it's still good practice to work in controlled sections, because you never know what's going to happen. And you also never know if you're going to need to take a bathroom break, or if a client is going to call, or what. And so you want to work in an area that's small enough that you can quickly clean it up, so that you don't have to leave anything sitting on the painting that you don't want sitting on the painting. It's kind of like anything, work in a controlled amount. and you have a better chance of success. And so I'm not using a lot of pressure to work on this painting, just a little bit. And I'm just using a bristle brush because bristles are pretty stiff and they give me enough agitation without really abrading the surface of the painting. If I were to use something like a nylon brush or a brass wire brush, then I would run the risk of damaging or scratching the surface of the painting. But using the bristle brush, it's soft enough that it's not going to pose any harm. And it does a good job of agitating the surface grime so that I can lift it off with the cotton balls. Surface grime is officially canceled today. Yeah, surface grime is officially canceled. Surface grime gets canceled hardcore in my studio. Would that this solution could go over the entire world. That would be an amazing thing right now. I know we're all dealing with a lot on our plates, and I'm going to try not to talk about all of that because I don't think that's why you guys are here. In fact, I think, well, maybe is why you guys are here. You guys and gals. Everybody's dealing with a lot. All the people I know are. I'm incredibly lucky and incredibly fortunate that I'm still able to work, that my clients are still bringing me work, that I work by myself, so I'm safe, that I can bring my kids to my work in case they need to be e-taught. I'm incredibly fortunate that my wife is still working, that all of our friends and our family are healthy and safe. I understand that is not the case for everybody, and though it probably doesn't mean much, I think that everybody who is directly affected by our current situation needs to know that those of us who aren't directly affected or who are less affected are really thinking and keeping all of you guys in our thoughts, our prayers, and trying to do as much as we can to support everybody who's having a harder time. So I don't know why I got on that rant and that tangent, but we're all in this together. Anyhow, back to painting. So right now at this point, it stinks like an ashtray. And this is one of those days where I'm definitely gonna have to take a shower before work and after work because it's gonna stink. I'm not gonna talk about my wife and my kids because let's see. Okay, so I'm going to try to start answering some questions. They're coming in so fast. I do have slow chat and top chat turned on, but you guys are just you guys are pretty nutty. Yeah, the painting is already starting to look better. You can see that just removing that layer of surface grime does a big deal. And yes, I will sometimes have to go over the same area twice with this cleaning solution if the surface grime is really thick. I mean, I've had paintings that I've had to go over 3, 4, 5 times with this because there's just so much stuff. Early on when I started working with my father, he got a commission from the Playboy Foundation or the Playboy Enterprises, which had a mansion in Lake Geneva out here in the Midwest, and they had a whole bunch of Leroy Neiman paintings. It's really big paintings of athletes and sports stars. And they had been hanging in the Playboy Mansion for years and had been subject to all sorts of intercurricular activities that one may assume happens at the Playboy Mansion during a party. And when he got them, they were so covered with soot, cigarette smoke, hamburger meat, that he had to, he joked about it, laying them on the floor and taking a mop, but to some degree, it was almost true that he had to, before he could even get to a point where he could start thinking about really doing the detailed work of cleaning the paintings, he was scooping hamburger meat, and I think I have somewhere a photograph of a cigarette that had been put out on the painting, and that was embedded in the acrylic paint. So it's, yeah, sometimes you do have to go over painting multiple times to get the surface grime off. And then there are cases where the painting has been varnished over a surface grime by somebody who just didn't clean it. And I think I've talked about that in some of my videos, and that's a really problematic thing. In those cases, you get the first layer of surface grime off, and then you get the varnish off, and then you have to go back to get the surface grime off again. And then sometimes you may even find another layer of varnish. It's like one of those parfaits where you have multiple layers of deliciousness, except in this case, it's disgustingness. So yeah, my father passed away in 2011 unexpectedly. It's not really something I'm going to go into a lot about here, but suffice it to say, it was a shock and a surprise, and it was a pretty intense experience. You know, you go from one day to the next being an employee to running and owning a business. You learn very, very quickly. Again, so for you guys who are just joining in, that is surface grime that is on the painting, and that's a combination of soot and then tobacco smoke and dust and dirt and all that other kind of lovely stuff. So, you know, this, and I'm going to take the bait here. I guess I'm baiting myself. A lot of people talk about the patina on a painting, and that it gives the painting a beautiful, je ne sais quoi, I don't know, a beautiful atmosphere, you know, kind of a smoky, dark, broody, mysterious, something like that. And, you know, patina is one of those things that's kind of misunderstood, I think. Furniture has patina, homes have patina, but artwork doesn't really have patina. It's just dirty. And the reason that we can make that understanding is that the artist, if the artist wanted this painting to be a dark nighttime scene, the artist would have painted a dark nighttime scene. If the artist wanted a layer of brown or gray atop it, the artist would have put that there. Now, at the time when this painting was painted, I don't know, but I'm going to guess probably 1830s or something like that, maybe 1850s. They didn't have synthetic, archival, ultraviolet stable varnishes. They had damar, and they had mastic, and they had copal, and they had shellac. And all of those natural resins, they darken with exposure to UV light, the sunlight, ambient UV. And so they didn't know that, maybe they did know, but they didn't have any other options. So they didn't have any choice but to use the best materials they had, even though they were fallible. And the artist also certainly didn't expect, or I don't know, maybe they did. Who knows what artists think and expect, that this painting would sit over a fireplace and be subject to all of that soot accumulation and all of that smoke, you know, cigarette or pipe or cigar smoke. So the idea that there is a patina on varnish, on a painting, it's one that I just don't believe is true. Case in point, when the conservators in Italy started to do the once-in-a-lifetime conservation of the Sistine Chapel, they did it open, and they erected a scaffold, and they wanted the populace to see it. They wanted everyone to see what was happening. And so the conservators were visible, the Sistine Chapel was visible, and as they started to clean the painting, people started to throw things at the conservators, shoes, garbage, and they started to yell at the conservators. And it's because they said, "You're destroying the Sistine Chapel. Look, it's got this beautiful, moody quality to it, and you're taking it off. How dare you ruin the patina, you heretics," and blah, blah, blah. So what they did was they covered the scaffolding with a reproduction of the Sistine Chapel. So all those sad saps who traveled all the way to Italy to see it could at least see something. And then they worked kind of privately until they unveiled it. And when they unveiled it, I mean, to say it was a night and day difference just kind of doesn't even begin to address it. The Sistine Chapel now, after conservation, is one of the most glorious pieces of artwork ever seen. And of course, the conservators knew it was going to look like that. And it was because, you know, for 500 years, give or take, the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling was accumulating candle soot. And bird poop and all sorts of other stuff that had been, floating up to the ceiling during church services and from tourists and all that kind of stuff. And so removing it revealed just how glorious and how amazing of a painting it was. So, it's always a delicate balance because we grow accustomed to the way that things are, and things change so slowly that those changes are almost imperceptible. It's like watching your hair go gray. You kind of don't realize that it's going gray until maybe somebody one day says, "Oh, wow, you got a lot of gray hair," or getting wrinkles in your face. They happen so slowly that we don't necessarily see it until somebody points it out. Anyhow, let's see, any questions that, periodic care of artwork. I generally tell my clients the best thing to do is nothing. You can dust it, but you really want to leave the cleaning to the professionals because you just don't want to get into a situation where something goes wrong. And I'm not trying to say that you can't do things on your own, but it's not a matter of getting the materials or the techniques. The question is not if, but when something is going to go sideways. And if you are not prepared for that, you can get yourself into real trouble. That's why in surgery, obviously surgeons need to learn, but new surgeons who haven't conducted a procedure are always paired up with expert surgeons who have done it many times before, so that if something goes wrong with the new surgeon, the expert can step in and correct it. And that's part of the learning process. So don't tinker with your paintings yourself. Bring them to a conservator, talk to your conservator, and figure out what the best thing to do is. I'm just trying to look about some of these questions. They come so fast. Air purification. Yeah, I do have a HEPA HVAC system that cycles and circulates my air. I used to have a couple of fume arms that could be moved at the old studio. I haven't gotten those installed at the new studio yet because I'm debating if I want to get a portable systems or fixed systems, but that's a whole nother thing. I don't do paper conservation. I don't do textile conservation. I don't really do objects conservation or metal conservation. I focus mostly on paintings. And when I do run into a situation of paper or another material, I will refer those people to other conservators. I'm not trying to do everything. I'm not trying to take everybody's lunch. I'm trying to do one thing, do it well, and then keep other conservators alive and in business. And I have a broad network of people all over the country who I refer. So cotton ball, unrolled, little wooden stick. And this is the magic of how I roll my own swabs. That's it. Nothing special. There we go. Let's see. And that is the swab. There is the swab I'm going to be using. Nothing crazy. I have a brother. He is not involved in conservation. He's an educator. He helps me sometimes when I need help because he's my brother. And for the record, yes, I do pay him. I just joke about not paying him in the videos because it's funny. And anybody who has a sibling can attest to that. Largest, most expensive work, largest work I've worked on, maybe a 35 by 15 foot painting that I had to stretch and do some conservation on. Most expensive, worked on a 14 or $15 million Roy Lichtenstein painting. But the value of the painting has kind of no interest to me. I have no interest in the value of the painting, and who the artist is and the value and how important it is really kind of falls away after your first dozen or so conservations. At least it should, because if you're still nervous or wowed about that kind of stuff, it's going to affect how you approach your work. So anyway, I've gotten the swab, I've applied some solvent to it, and I'm going to start up here in this corner. And I'm just gently rolling and lifting the varnish off of the painting. I'm not using pressure at all. I'm just gently letting the solvent and the swab do their thing. And this is one of those things I talk about a lot, about working in a controlled area. And because now I'm making contact with the original paint layer, this is the high stakes part. Unlike retouching, which can be removed, or structural work, which can be removed and redone, you cannot put back paint that you have accidentally removed. And so this is why the cleaning process is generally the last thing that conservators learn or should learn. I apprenticed with my father for, I think, 5 or 6 years before he let me clean a painting. And then it wasn't a client's painting. It was a painting that he had purchased at a flea market, like a $5 painting, which I summarily destroyed. But I'll tell you all about that in another video. I gotta leave something. I gotta keep some content for later. So I am working just in this area with a blue in the sky because I want to get an idea of how this paint color responds to the solid. And it's stable, it's sound, it's responding how I hoped. But this paint color, the blue up here, may respond differently than this red. So I just don't want to start going crazy like that because I don't know if I need to have a stronger solvent or a more mild solvent on this area than this area. So varnish, old, dirty, discolored, natural resin varnish. That is what the artist put on the painting 100 years ago and never thought would turn this color. So that's what we want to get rid of so that we can see what the artist wanted us to see, which is his beautiful palette. There is a sky. Let's see. So I work on lots of pieces at a time. I mean, anywhere from 10 to 20 pieces at any given moment. And that's just because I run a private studio and I have all sorts of clients. I have private collectors, dealers, auction houses, galleries, and I have to manage timelines, expectations, delivery dates, all that kind of stuff. And also, if I worked on one painting at a time, I'd go out of business, number one, and I'd go insane. Having a variety of work allows me to keep fresh and to stay engaged and interested in the work that I'm doing. Any repetitive task, if done too long, the mastery disappears and the mundanity takes over. And what I mean by that is there's a certain point at which becoming a master or the zen of the task that you're repeating starts to fail and it starts to become monotonous and you start to develop bad habits and bad form. It's kind of like if you play golf or if you play basketball or you shoot pool or anything where there's technique that you need to practice, there is a benefit to doing 1,000 putts or 1,000 free throws. But at some point, you've got to mix it up so that A, your muscle memory evolves, but B, so that you don't start developing sloppy habits that will then translate into the form you're trying to create and be corrupting. And so, I try not to clean paintings all day or retouch all day because, frankly, by the end of the day, if I've been retouching for 8 hours, I know that the quality of retouching that I'm doing at the end of the day is just not as good as the quality of retouching that I did in the beginning of the day when I was fresh. And so I try to break it up, retouch for an hour or two and then go do something else that is of a different technique and requires a different part of my brain and my body so that I can be interested and engaged. So more varnish coming off. Let's see. Do I keep notebooks? Yeah, I keep a little notebook. I keep database on things. My father had notebooks that I have, and those are really helpful because over time, you come across the same paintings or the same artists. Sorry, not the same paintings. You may come across the same artists several times, and having an acute understanding of their works, how they responded to different techniques, materials, etc., can be really helpful because it allows you to kind of jump right in and not have to kind of reinvent the wheel. Also, there are some galleries that I have long relationships with, and I've been working on bodies of work for them for 20 years. And I keep notes on the varnishes that I've used so that if I want to recreate one of those varnishes, I have the exact ratio. Because sometimes, they'll tell me, oh, that batch of paintings you did this past week, the varnish was perfect. Oh my God, whatever you did, do that again. And so in 5 years, I can come back to it and say, oh, it was this, that, and the other thing. They really liked it. So I'm going to recreate that varnish on another one of the artist's paintings. So keeping notes is really helpful for everything. I mean, if you're a baker and you keep notes, you will probably not make the same mistakes twice. You'll learn from the work that you've done, and you'll become better, faster, smarter. Do I get back issues from hunching over all day? No, I'm not really hunched over. I keep as good posture as I can. And I'm on my feet all day and I'm pretty active. So, I don't know, talk to me in 30 years when I'm a hunchback, and I guess I'll have to eat my words. Do I get hand cramps? Not from this, definitely from scraping. My hand gets tired and fatigued, which is another reason why, I switch what I'm doing. In some of the videos where I've had to scrape a lot, that is done over the course of weeks, because otherwise, physically and mentally, I would just, I'd be done. I have a dog. You guys have seen her in one of my videos. She's a wire fox terrier, and she used to come to work with me every once in a while to keep me company. But she stopped because every time she comes here, she eats something that she's not supposed to. She eats a cotton ball or a piece of wood, or I don't know, a dust bunny or something, because she's a dog and she's stupid. And then she gets sick, and it's kind of a disaster. So she doesn't come to work with me anymore. Also, she's not a good employee, and she's just, she's a dog. She's not a great shop dog. Why am I not making ASMR anymore? It's not a matter of me not wanting to. It's partially a matter of the amount of time and labor it takes to coordinate shooting. It just takes so much more planning and producing to have a controlled environment where I can do the ASMR stuff. I have to have my HVAC system off, my hot tables off. There's a train that runs outside that I have to account for, and traffic and all that kind of stuff, because I know that the ASMR crowd really doesn't like it when sirens burst into some really soothing sounds. So, if I can, I will, but there's, it's just so much work, and I do all of it myself. I don't have a production team or a camera crew. So it's always a delicate balance competing with actual work. Do I paint for myself? Not at the moment. I just have too much going on in my life. I keep a sketchbook, and at some point when I have some time, I will take up painting again, but not right now. What's the oldest painting I've cleaned? Data or data? I don't know. The oldest painting I've cleaned, I just had a piece here from 1480. It was on my Instagram feed. You guys can go check that out. That may be one of the oldest. That was the oldest verified date. I've worked on pieces that may be older, but it's always hard to tell the age of a piece. And of course, the owner or the client always asserts that the piece is much, much older, much, much more important, or much, much more valuable than maybe it really is. And I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But, the client will say, oh, it's definitely from 1480, 1450 for sure. Oh, 1420 if it was 1410. This is from the 1300s. So, you always take it with a grain of salt. My last name, my father was Swiss, and Baumgartner is the keeper of the trees. So I guess at some point in my family's history, we had orchards, or I don't know, something like that. We traced the family back, I think, to about 1200, give or take. But we stopped. The records got a little bit hard to access at that point, and so we just said 1200 is fine. We don't need to know anymore. But who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Let's see. I've never done a 23andMe because I'm not interested in giving them my DNA and my data. Also, I'm not, we have pretty good family records, and so I'm happy and content with that. When did I start thinking about the YouTube channel? Okay, well, I'll take that one. So I think it was in 2016. Like many people, I had an Instagram, and it was mostly full of pictures of food and my dogs, and only 4 people followed it. Like everybody else's Instagram. And I had a procedure at the hospital, and I was bored, and I was sitting in my recovery room, and I thought, maybe I'll put some of my conservation photos up, see if anybody likes those. And I put them up, and people did like them. I mean, they were interested. And so I created an account and started posting to Instagram. And it was mostly out of, I worked by myself at that point. You can it can be isolating to work by yourself. And it was nice to connect to other people, and also to connect to other conservators who are online around the world. I also thought, like, well, my friends ask me a lot, well, what is it that you do? What? And I said, just go to my Instagram. So anyways, I did the Instagram thing for a while, and then over Thanksgiving one year, it kind of went viral, and kind of went crazy. I thought, well, this is kind of fun. This may be a thing. And it had just so happened that a year or two earlier, I had a wonderful William Merritt Chase portrait of a girl in the studio, and it's up on my YouTube. It's probably the oldest video. And I had hired a videographer to come and make a little 8-minute video of it. I told her I wanted a 3-minute video because 8 minutes was too long, and she tried her best and could only cut it down to 8 minutes. And I thought, well, that was a failure. So I put it up, and it, just like everything on YouTube, it languished in obscurity for a long time until, I don't know, somebody on Reddit linked to it, something like that. I don't know. And again, it just went berserk, viral. And then it was kind of like, gee, there's something to this. Let's try another one. And it also, to be frank, it was a way that I could stay engaged in some of the work that I'm doing that is otherwise not necessarily all that interesting. Sometimes conservation is boring, but having videos to film and production, post-production to do, and editing and all that kind of stuff, that is actually kind of it's kind of fun, and it keeps me engaged in projects and keeps me looking for new things that I want to share. So that's how it started. And then, as you can imagine, it just kind of took on a life of its own. And now, now I'm on YouTube doing a live stream of something that I thought nobody would ever want to see. Funniest experience I've had. Oh, let me think about that one. Do I work over holidays? No. I don't work on the weekends either. Geez, there's so many. Are you guys counting how many times I say Is that what's going to happen here? Definitely don't make a drinking game out of it, because you're not going to make it very far. Do I collect art? Not really. See, there you go. I have artwork that I have collected from friends when I was in school, art school. A couple of pieces that I've bought, small pieces, nothing extravagant or outlandish. I'm not a big art collector. I think perhaps one of the reasons is because I live with art on such a daily basis. I get such a fill. It's kind of like living inside of the museum, that it's hard for me to imagine having to live with any one piece for the rest of my life. That said, if anybody wants to steal Lady Agnew of, or Lady Lochnaw, I can't remember what the title is, the John Singer Sargent painting that's in the Museum of Art in Glasgow, you can send it to me. That is the painting that I would covet more than any other in the world. There's just something about that painting that's gives me chills. Seriously, are you guys counting how many times I say Have I ever identified a forgery? Yes. Identifying forgeries, and I think I talked a little bit about this in the last video. It's a tricky thing. Most clients are completely unaware that their painting is a forgery and have no ulterior motives or nefarious motives